de la Cour de justice de l'Union européenne, Monsieur le Premier vice-président de la Commission européenne, Madame la vice-présidente de la Commission européenne contre le racisme et l'intolérance du Conseil de l'Europe, Monsieur le directeur de l'Agence des droits fondamentaux de l'Union européenne. À la veille des élections européennes, notre Assemblée veut rappeler que le respect des droits fondamentaux n'est pas qu'un principe inscrit dans nos traités et nos chartes. C'est un véritable impératif. Il permet de préserver nos démocraties en assurant notamment la participation, la représentation et la protection de tous ces acteurs. Les villes et régions sont aussi des garants de la démocratie européenne et se sont donc directement concernés par les attaques contre les droits fondamentaux. Du fait de leur proximité avec les citoyens et de leur relation avec la société civile, les autorités locales et régionales jouent un rôle crucial dans la promotion et le respect des valeurs européennes. Elles sont en première ligne lorsqu'il s'agit de protéger les groupes vulnérables à travers des actions spécifiques dans les domaines de l'éducation, de la liberté d'expression et d'association et des politiques sociales. L'état de droit, la démocratie et les droits fondamentaux, individuels, civiques, politiques, économiques et sociaux sont au cœur du projet européen. Jamais définitivement acquis, nous devons défendre ces droits. La diversité doit rester notre force et ne jamais être présentée comme une menace dans les discours politiques. Ceux qui s'opposent à la diversité renient nos valeurs essentielles, fondatrices de notre Union. Alors que les discours de rejet et de haine se développent, alors que l'état de droit est parfois remis en cause, il faut réagir. Au cours des dernières années, la Commission européenne a souhaité intégrer la société civile à l'élaboration des politiques ayant pour but de promouvoir la dignité, l'égalité et la protection des enfants migrants. Elle a aussi pu s'exprimer sur des sujets lors du colloque annuel sur les droits fondamentaux. L'Agence des droits fondamentaux a également contribué à encourager le dialogue et à sensibiliser le public, notamment en recensant les meilleures pratiques au niveau local. La Cour de justice de l'Union européenne a toujours eu une place centrale pour la défense de l'état de droit et des droits fondamentaux dans l'Union. Son rôle demeure aujourd'hui essentiel. L'état de droit est une condition nécessaire au respect des droits de l'homme et de la démocratie. Mais les États et les institutions ne sauraient garantir seuls le maintien de cet état de droit. Nous saluons à ce titre la communication adoptée par la Commission la semaine dernière sur le renforcement de l'état des droits dans l'Union. Cette invitation à élargir le débat à tous les acteurs concernés constitue une première étape très positive. Les autorités locales et régionales et les millions de mandataires qui y travaillent tous les jours sont déterminés à poursuivre la coopération afin de s'assurer que l'Europe, grâce à l'action de tous ces acteurs, demeure une terre où les droits fondamentaux sont respectés. J'ai maintenant le plaisir de donner la parole au président de la Cour de justice de l'Union européenne, M. Koen Lenaerts.
Thank you, President Lamberts. Mr. President Lamberts, Mr. First Vice President Timmermans, Mr. Director General O'Flaherty, Ms. Vice Chair Ghidei Biidu, members of the European Committee of Regions, it is a real honor and a pleasure for me to be here today. And I would first like to congratulate President Lamberts for taking this initiative. I look forward to engaging with you, and I believe that this will be a stimulating discussion on the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union and what it means for regional and local authorities. The European Union is founded on the values of respect for fundamental rights, democracy and the rule of law, those founding values give legitimacy to the European project and show that the European Union is much more than just its internal market. The European Union is first and foremost a union of democracies, plural, a union of justice, and a union of rights. Those values give a sense of belonging to a union that strives to leave a better and more equal society for the next generation. Those values are interdependent, given that fundamental rights are little more than empty promises where there is no democracy and no rule of law. And it is impossible for a democracy to work properly without respect for the rule of law and fundamental rights. And finally, the rule of law is devoid of substance without democracy and fundamental rights. Those interdependent values are grounded in the constitutional traditions that are common to the member states. We must not forget that those traditions were not established overnight, but reflect our long struggle to build democracies where individuals can freely decide their own future, where each and every one of us enjoys a sphere of individual freedom, and where a person, regardless of his or her origin, beliefs, wealth and condition, has access to effective justice. The Charter of Fundamental Rights contributes to transforming those values into living truths. The Charter stands at the pinnacle of the hierarchy of EU norms. Just like the founding treaties, the Charter is primary EU law, constitutional law of the European Union. This means first that the entire body of EU law, comprising thousands of norms, is to be interpreted in the light of the Charter. Second, the EU institutions and the member states, when they are implementing EU law, are bound by the Charter. Any EU measure, be it of general or individual application, that runs counter to the Charter is to be annulled or declared invalid. And there are several examples in the Court of Justice's case law where acts of Union institutions have been in whole or in part declared invalid because in conflict with the Charter. Similarly, a national measure implementing EU law that is incompatible with the right enshrined in the Charter must be set aside. Last but not least, the Charter is not a declaration of intentions containing programmatic norms. On the contrary, since it is an integral component of the rule of law within the European Union, the Court of Justice of the European Union and national courts are bound to uphold that catalogue of fundamental rights. The rights recognized in the Charter enjoy effective judicial protection. This means, for example, that where there is a right to be free from discrimination in the workplace, a right of asylum seekers to be treated with dignity, a right to vote in European or local elections, or the right to be forgotten on the internet, there must be a remedy provided by EU law. That is the reason why it is important for the European integration project as a whole that each member state should have strong and independent national courts. The more independent courts are, the better rights are being protected. The better rights are being protected, the stronger our democracies will be. At this stage, I would like to make 3 remarks that are very important for an understanding of how the Charter operates in the EU legal order. First, when I said that the Charter is binding upon the member states, the expression member states is to be interpreted broadly, so as to include local and regional authorities. Accordingly, just like national parliaments, local and regional assemblies or parliaments are also bound by the Charter. Just like national governments, local and regional governments are bound by the Charter. Just like national administrations, local and regional administrations are bound by the Charter. Second, the Charter always applies to the EU institutions, and that is so even in the rare cases when these institutions act outside the scope of application of EU law. That is typically the case when EU institutions such as the Commission or the European Central Bank act in the sphere of the Eurozone institutions. By contrast, the same does not hold true in respect of the member states, be it at national, regional or local levels. Vis-à-vis the member states, the Charter only applies when the member states are implementing union law. Logically, the question then arises what the expression implementing union law is to mean. In the past, I have used the following metaphor to explain that expression. The Charter is the shadow of EU law. Just as an object defines the contours of its shadow, the scope of EU law determines the scope of the Charter. There can be no situation that is governed by EU law in which the Charter does not apply, as this would be contrary to the rule of law within the EU. Three examples taken from the case law of the Court of Justice may illustrate this point. First, a regional or local authority is implementing EU law where it organizes a competition for police officers or firefighters on the basis of the relevant legislation that requires applicants to be no more than a certain age. When organizing such a competition, those authorities implement Directive 2000/78 that gives concrete expression to the principle of non-discrimination on grounds of age in the workplace. The same applies where a region passes a law providing, with regard to the grant of housing benefits, different treatment for long-term third country nationals compared to that accorded to citizens of the Union residing in the territory of that region, provided that those benefits fall within the scope of the relevant EU legislation. Similarly, a member state is also implementing EU law where a district governor rejects an application for the opening of a new pharmacy on the ground that such opening does not comply with legislation that makes the opening of new pharmacies conditional upon complying with a rigid demographic criterion. That is because that legislation may constitute a limitation on the exercise of the freedom of establishment, and as such falls within the scope of the Charter. This brings me to my third and final remark. The application of the Charter does not rule out diversity as such. In my view, criticisms from certain quarters that see the Charter as a threat to diversity are wide of the mark. It is common ground that fundamental rights may be examined from two often conflicting perspectives. On the one hand, fundamental rights are a symbol of universality that unites individuals in their human condition. On the other hand, the way in which fundamental rights are weighed against objectives of general interest is what may distinguish one member state from another member state and one region from another region within member states. Thus, the way in which fundamental rights are subject to balancing may serve as a means of protecting national, regional and local identities. However, as interpreted by the Court of Justice, the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union manages to reconcile those two conflicting perspectives, as it allows room for national, regional and local diversity, whilst ensuring European unity. The role of the Charter is to provide for a common European threshold of protection that Member States must comply with when they are implementing EU law. Above that threshold, Member States can impose their own standards of protection, provided that the primacy, unity and effectiveness of EU law are respected. That proviso means, for example, that the existence of a uniform level of fundamental rights protection at EU level rules out national diversity. But that proviso also means that in the absence of EU harmonization, a member state may apply its own standards of protection insofar as it does not render ineffective the EU measure that is being implemented. It follows that, in the field of fundamental rights protection, the choices made in order to balance unity and diversity are political decisions that are adopted at EU level. The role of the Court of Justice is limited to ensuring that in adopting such decisions, the EU legislator has complied with primary EU law and especially with the Charter. To conclude, in my view, the Charter as interpreted by the Court of Justice gives true meaning to the motto of the European Union, as it allows the EU system of fundamental rights protection to be genuinely united in diversity. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, pour ce cadrage, je dirais même très pédagogique, de la problématique, qui a aussi souligné l'importance fondamentale du sujet pour tous les niveaux de pouvoir au niveau de l'Union européenne. Maintenant, j'ai le plaisir de passer la parole au premier vice-président de la Commission européenne, M. Frans Timmermans.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you very much for this invitation to speak to the Committee of the Regions. We've had many occasions in the past, almost 5 years, to discuss these issues and other issues, and I've always highly appreciated the possibility to have this exchange of views. I very much want to echo what President Lenaerts has said, that fundamental rights, the rule of law and democracy are among the fundamental values of the Union as they are enshrined in Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union. They're not in Article 200, but in Article 2. So these values matter to define who we are as Europeans. The rule of law has a particular role. It is a prerequisite for the protection of all the other fundamental values, including fundamental rights and democracy. Without the rule of law, you can't really protect them. So fundamental rights would remain a reality on paper only if their protection was not ensured by independent courts. And democracy, including at the local level, is protected only if it is based on a system of effective checks and balances and can rely on independent courts to ensure freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and respect of the rules governing the electoral process. The guidance on protection of personal data in the electoral context, which the Commission adopted last September, following the Facebook Analytica case, is a concrete example of the importance of fundamental rights for democracy. In fact, respect for the rule of law is essential for the very functioning of the EU, for the effective application of EU law, for the proper functioning of the internal market, for maintaining an investment-friendly environment, and for mutual trust. Very simply put, every single national judge is also an EU judge. And very simply put, the European Court of Justice, in its function, is also a national Court of Justice. Member States, economic operators and citizens need to be able to have trust in each other's legal systems. A problem in one Member State is therefore a problem for the Union as a whole. And the rule of law is not only of importance at a national level, it is vital at all levels of government, including at local and regional level. Sadly, we've seen that rule of law concerns have multiplied across the Union over the past years. These developments have only made the Commission more convinced of the importance of using all the instruments that we have to uphold EU values, and in particular the rule of law, in the most effective manner. Indeed, in recent years, the EU has developed a number of tools and instruments to promote and uphold the rule of law, which today form our rule of law toolbox. One of the key instruments of this toolbox is the infringement procedure. In certain situations where the independence of the justice system of a member state is affected, the Commission can launch infringement proceedings for violation of the principle of effective judicial protection and the right to an effective remedy as guaranteed by Article 19 of the Treaty and Article 47 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights. And I take advantage of the presence of President Lenaerts to underline that the recent case law of the European Court of Justice on judicial independence is probably one of the most important recent legal developments in the EU. I would argue personally that case 6416, the ruling in that case, that's the Association of Portuguese Judges, the importance of that case, for me, ranks at the same level as for instance, Costa Enel or Van Gentenloos de Frans Sabena, and is in some ways the European equivalent of the US Supreme Court ruling Gitlow, which also determined exactly what the judicial protection is. The Commission has, as you know, launched infringements to safeguard judicial independence in Poland based on this recent case law. To be very specific, this has to do with especially the procedures against judges, disciplinary procedures against judges that, in the view of the Commission, have a chilling effect on the independence of the judges. Beyond launching infringement procedures, the deterioration of the situation of the rule of law in Poland led the Commission in December 2017 to initiate the procedure set out in Article 7 of the Treaty. In September, this Parliament, well, the venue where we are, this Parliament decided to initiate the same procedure as regards Hungary. These are unprecedented steps. In addition, the Commission is using other instruments, including audits and investigations relating to the use of EU funds, as well as measures through the European semester, with the help of the EU Justice Scoreboard and of the country reports that the Commission issues to monitor justice reform in Member States. Furthermore, the Commission has proposed a regulation on protecting the Union's budget in the event of generalised deficiencies as regards the rule of law in the Member States. Also, Transparency International, OECD, will show that if there is a problem with the rule of law, there's almost a linear relationship with the increase of corruption. So in that sense, the Union has an obligation to look after its financial interest. We're talking about taxpayers' money from across the European Union. There is a growing consensus that further action to protect the rule of law in the whole of the Union is needed. And to that end, we need to have a debate. That is why the Commission has adopted last week a communication on further strengthening the rule of law. This communication serves to take stock of the available tools to monitor, assess and protect the rule of law in the Union. It also looks back at the experience of the past years so that we can start a wider European debate on how the rule of law could be further strengthened. This wider debate should include all the other EU institutions, the Committee of the Regions as well as Member States and society at large, because the rule of law is a shared responsibility for all of us. The communication of the Commission outlines different strands which could frame the discussion on possible avenues for the future. First, the need for better promotion of the rule of law. Second, early prevention of risks or breaches to the rule of law. And third, effective response when such issues occur in the Union. In June, the Commission intends to put forward its own proposals, its rule of law initiative, taking into account the results of this consultation. Allow me to focus today on promotion as a better promotion of the rule of law, not only at a national level, but also at a regional and local level, is of particular importance. Increased efforts should be geared towards better promoting knowledge of the rule of law standards and case law, and more generally towards promoting a rule of law culture in the Member States. Also, the independence of the judiciary is not just set in rules, it's also a culture of relationship between institutions in the Member States and at the EU level. We can achieve this through communication activities for the public, common EU approaches that help promote a stronger rule of law culture across institutions and professions, continued engagement with the Council of Europe, very important, and its Venice Commission, an incredibly important tool as well, as are other tools, and an effective participation of civil society. Also, as regards the protection of fundamental rights as enshrined in the Charter, the main challenge today is how to ensure that these rights become a reality on the ground. What is happening at the regional and local level in that respect is particularly important. And I know that this committee is fully aware of this. Now, to conclude, I can only reiterate my sincere wish that the debate launched by the Commission's communication will not just take place in Brussels or in the capitals of our member states, but will also take place in the different regions and municipalities. And knowing President Lamberts, I'm absolutely sure the Committee of the Regions will also want to be part of that debate as well. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Vice-président. Et en effet, le débat d'aujourd'hui et la communication récente se rejoignent vraiment à un bon moment. Et je peux confirmer que le Comité des régions continuera à suivre activement ce débat et s'y inscrire également sera une de ses tâches. Maintenant, j'ai le grand plaisir de passer la parole à la vice-présidente de la Commission européenne du Conseil de l'Europe contre le racisme et l'intolérance. En matière d'état de droit, en matière de liberté fondamentale, en matière de démocratie, les synergies et les complémentarités entre le Conseil de l'Europe et l'Union européenne sont particulièrement importantes et parfois même un peu ignorées. C'est pour ça que je suis très content que vous ayez, Madame, accepté notre invitation et je passe immédiatement la parole à Madame Domenica Ghidei Biidu.
Thank you very much. Good morning, distinguished guests. First of all, let me express my gratitude to Mr. Frans Timmermans, President of the European Commission of the Regions, on behalf of ECRI, and myself for this invitation to speak at this plenary. I represent the European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance. ECRI is a human rights body of the Council of Europe, the only European body mandated to conduct regular monitoring on all European countries, including all EU member states, on questions related to racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, LGBTI phobia, and intolerance. We have been doing this work for the past 25 years. In fact, this year we are going to celebrate our 25th anniversary. The role of regional and local authorities in combating discrimination and promoting equality. ECRI considers that combating racism and intolerance can only be effective if the anti-racist, pro-tolerance message filtered down from the European level, be it court and all bodies, at the national level, reach all sectors of society at the local level. Regional and local authorities have a pivotal role in the fulfillment and also implementation of legislation and policies to combat racism and discrimination and intolerance and providing equality. Because of the close relationship between citizens, inhabitants, and their local representatives, the regional and local authorities are best placed to analyze the human rights situation, identify the relevant problems, and take actions to solve them. Regional and local authorities have many competencies, and their actions have the impact on anti-discrimination and the promotion of equality. You, as local authorities and regional authorities, are a vital component of democracy, rule of law, and democratic decision-making. You provide services that are often key to the well-being and participation of all groups in society. You are also employers with a significant number of staff and have a lot of opportunity to create a diverse and inclusive working force. You purchase a wide range of goods and services from a significant number of suppliers. This gives you opportunity to implement regulations and also impact contract compliance, combating discrimination and enhancing diversity and inclusion. You set standards through regulation in different sectors or through funding and grant making to civil society organizations. By doing so, you support social cohesion and organize the participation of different groups and individuals who are not heard. One of our major tasks is our monitoring activities. Let me share a couple of examples of ECRI recommendation to the EU member states relating to the role of regional and local authorities in combating discrimination and intolerance and promoting equality. We have recommended Spain to establish, intensify and institutionalise at local, regional and national levels the framework of regular and sustainable dialogues and cooperation between vulnerable groups and police services. In our recommendation to Italy, we have asked the state that the context of relations between the state and the regions, adequate support is made available for the integration process in every region, inter alia, by making more effective use of the European Union structural funds. We have recommended Poland to take steps to ensure that programmes of the Roma community are implemented and balanced in an effective way in all its municipalities concerned. And we have recommended Lithuania to cooperate more closely with the financial support relevant local authorities. In particular, would like to put forward also the example we have been providing for Roma to sufficient housing to vulnerable groups of the Roma community. There are also problems and challenges. Regional and local authorities have limited capacity to combat discrimination within the broad realm of their competences. It is clear that you operate performance enhanced where effective equality and diversity systems are in place and implemented. However, regional and local authorities are complex and busy institutions, and there is always a challenge for busy and complex institutions to create the time and space to consider, devise and implement such systems. There are a number of partnerships on enhancing promotion of equality and inclusive society at regional and local level. It's imperative that these partnerships are the result of specific and sustainable strategies and that are not just ad hoc initiatives that are donor-driven. For example, the Council of Europe Intercultural Cities Programme supports cities in reviewing their policies through an intercultural lens and developing comprehensive intercultural strategies to help them manage diversity, positively realize the diversity advantages. And there are also other examples like the Rainbow City initiatives and also the European Alliances of Cities of Regions for Roma Inclusion and the European Coalition of Cities Against Racism and the CoR. The role of us as international organizations and European organizations is imperative so that we can translate abstract equality and human rights principles into a language and a practice that can be understood and applied by local authorities to combat racism and intolerance in daily activities. The promising, but I'd also like to put forward the good work the FRA has been doing in considerable work in effective communication about how to combat human rights. Regional and local authorities that serve as examples of good practice are important in stimulating a wider engagement by other local authorities on the equality and non-discrimination issues. Let me share with you a couple of promising good examples of actions taken by regional and local authorities we came across when conducting our monitoring visits to member states. In Paris, for example, Médecins du Monde operates medical dispensaries for irregular migrants with cooperation of local authorities. Some states, such as Austria, operate a functional ignorance, that's what we call it, so that there is a firewall allowing irregular migrants to access emergency health care services without inquiring regular legal status. Many Italian cities like Firenze, Torino, Genova have publicly attended access to education by granting all children the right to attend nursery schools of immigrant status. Similarly, the Hesse region in Germany has allowed children to enroll in schools without proof of local residence since 2009, and several municipalities, including Frankfurt, Hamburg and Munich, have lifted the obligation of staff working in the education sector to report the irregularly present migrant children in schools. Like several municipalities in Europe, the city of Ghent in Belgium provides free legal advice to all migrants in cooperation with Information Point Migration organized by the integration services of the cities and funded by local authorities. I think the initiative which was launched yesterday here by the local leaders to showcase migrant integration in EU regions and cities is a very important example. The 5 points you have made in your statement, you may have heard, coincide with the many points the ECRI has recommended member states throughout the years. Let me conclude by referring to the last speech of the late Dr. Martin Luther King, the parable of the Good Samaritan. Let's be inclusive and compassionate by action and not by proxy. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Vice-Présidente. Vous avez à la fois souligné la dimension territoriale du travail du Conseil de l'Europe et aussi ses implications très pratiques. Et maintenant, je souhaite donner la parole au directeur de l'Agence européenne pour les droits fondamentaux, Monsieur Michael O'Flaherty.
Thank you very much, President Lamberts, distinguished members of the Committee of the Regions. I warmly welcome the invitation to be with you today, as speaking in the plenary constitutes a deepening of the relationship of the Fundamental Rights Agency with your important committee. And let me acknowledge with respect and appreciation the strong cooperation we already have with your Commission for Citizenship, Governance, Institutional and External Affairs, as well as with the Commission on Social Affairs. Dear committee members, I think the point has already very effectively been made by previous speakers regarding how core to the EU are fundamental rights and the rule of law, and how important a role local, city and regional governments play in that regard. I'd have to say that my own life experience echoes the importance of human rights at the local level. I'm the son of a mayor, and I spent my childhood managing our front door and our telephone as person after person right through my childhood came looking for my father to seek solutions to all manner of problem: healthcare, education, housing, the treatment of minorities in the locality, employment. Back when I was a kid, neither myself nor my father nor any of the people who came visiting ever framed these issues as being about human rights. But of course, that's exactly what they were. My father, as a mayor, was in the front line of promoting and delivering respect for human rights. I very much welcome in that context then the renewed attention to this issue, not just in this debate, but more generally in the current period. These are challenging times for the delivery of respect for human rights. We need a partnership with you in order to achieve that. There are 4 reasons in particular, beyond what has already been said, which suggest to me that we give high priority to this issue at the level of local and regional governments. The first is that you are trusted. Eurobarometers repeatedly tell us that local government maintains a high level of trust from citizens. Secondly, as the level of trust in you is maintained, it is falling with regard to central governments. And so therefore you are increasingly the more effective actor for the delivery of human rights solutions. Third, it's a simple fact that local solutions devised and implemented at the local and regional level often work best anyway when it comes to some of the great human rights challenges. For example, the reception of migrants. I've travelled across the Greek islands and I've seen where the local mayor and the local community was involved in the design of the reception facilities. It's on those islands that things are working better than elsewhere. It's the same with regard to integration of migrants. Our work repeatedly shows us that when the city is involved in a correct and proper manner in the design of integration strategies, then those strategies are more effective. It's the same concerning Roma. The most fruitful meetings I've ever had in terms of how to treat Roma with respect in our societies have been meetings involving local mayors and the Roma communities. And very similar findings indeed from our recent work with regard to what works best to support people with disability to get out of institutions. It's the local solutions across Europe that are providing the answers, not centralised policy making. Finally, in terms of why we need to engage with the local and the regional, with the city, is because you are so much better placed than anybody else to deliver on foundational elements for respect for human rights. For instance, and above all else, the empowerment of rights holders through building up their awareness of human rights, their knowledge and understanding, building what the First Vice President described as the culture of human rights and rule of law. And you're particularly well placed to deliver on this. Now, as local and regional governments rise to the challenge of being better champions of fundamental rights, there are, of course, a number of challenges. Let me briefly label just 5. The first, of course, is obvious, and that is that just as with any other level of government, sometimes the city or the region will be the problem, not the solution. The President of the Court has mentioned jurisprudence that points to this, and I could point to jurisprudence also from the European Court of Human Rights, but that's to be expected. But then, moving on, in terms of things that we can indeed engage and resolve, we have not invested sufficiently in helping local government understand how to best use the Charter of Fundamental Rights. And that is a challenge for us in this, the 10th anniversary year of the Charter. And the Fundamental Rights Agency will play its part in developing tools and resources specifically targeted to you in order to take up this challenge of dealing with a powerful, impressive, important instrument, the Charter, but also a rather difficult one to apply in practice. Third, we're well aware that part of the challenge for you in engaging issues of fundamental rights is the very varying degrees of centralisation and decentralisation across our member states. And I recall sitting with the mayor of a very important European city last year who was very frustrated. He said, I could house every migrant in my city if I had authority over housing, but that's a centralised function of government and I can do nothing about it. Fourth of my 5, we're also very much aware that in order for you to rise to the challenges we're speaking of today, you have to be much better involved in respectful consultation by central government. And we know that the quality of consultation is very uneven across our member states. And finally, very specific, very relevant for local and regional government is the extent to which the services you oversee are increasingly being privatised. And this raises obvious challenges in terms of how you can deliver on your responsibilities. In concluding my remarks, let me just point a little bit to possible pathways, frameworks in which you could further explore these issues. Ms. Ghidei Biidu mentioned a number of networks. I would add just 2. The first of these is the extremely interesting Human Rights Cities initiative. Human rights cities have been around now for a long time, but they're getting new attention here in Europe. Cities that formally commit to delivering for human rights, setting benchmarks and all of the necessary pragmatic tools to deliver on that commitment. There are 4 in Austria, 3 in Germany, 1 in Sweden and a region in Sweden, 2 in the Netherlands, and 1 each in the UK, Spain and Portugal. And the Fundamental Rights Agency is committed to working with human rights cities to support them in what we believe is their very promising potential impact. The second network, the second and final network I would mention to you today, because it's a very specific EU one, is that of the European Cities of Culture. Culture is indeed, as the First Vice President reminded us by his very use of the word, culture is about a quality of our societies and our lives within which we need to embed respect for human rights. And the agency will increasingly will explore with the Cities of Culture and with the Commission how we can make more visible in the Cities of Culture programme the human rights dimension. Mr. President, let me wrap up my words by citing the very last words of Mayor Pavel Adamovich on January the 13th, just seconds before he was killed. Mayor Adamovich closed his speech with the words, "It's time to share good." And I would suggest that that's a particularly splendid motto as we continue to explore this important area of work. I thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Directeur, pour cette approche très concrète et aussi le lien que vous avez créé avec la décentralisation dans les différents États. Et merci aussi d'avoir fait mention à notre ancien collègue Adamovic, auquel nous avons d'ailleurs dédié hier un de nos espaces dans notre siège. Il était vraiment un collègue très actif et son sort est vraiment quelque chose qui nous interpelle de manière très profonde. Maintenant, nous arrivons au débat et je donnerai d'abord la parole pour le temps de parole convenu aux différents représentants des groupes et je commence par le collègue Marek Woźniak pour le PPE.
Panie Przewodniczący, mówimy dzisiaj o niezwykle ważnych, istotnych kwestiach dla przyszłości Unii Europejskiej, dla przyszłości naszych społeczeństw. Ja przede wszystkim chciałem podziękować tym wszystkim, którzy dbają o podstawowe prawa i dbają o zasady demokracji w Unii Europejskiej. Chciałem na ręce pana Fransa Timmermansa złożyć podziękowania dla Komisji Europejskiej za troskę o Polskę, o to, co dzieje się w Polsce z perspektywy właśnie podstawowych praw, które powinny obowiązywać w Unii Europejskiej. My od długiego czasu już z niezwykłą troską spoglądamy na próby zmiany reguł funkcjonowania sądownictwa zwłaszcza, bo podzielamy wypowiedziane tutaj zresztą dość wyraźnie poglądy na to, że sądownictwo niezawisłe jest fundamentem demokracji. Jeśli ono w jakikolwiek sposób jest wzruszone, to trudno mówić o obronie demokratycznych zasad. Te starania, które są podejmowane przez instytucje unijne, są niezwykle ważne dla procesu demokratycznego w Polsce i są już pierwsze dobre efekty w zatrzymaniu tej tendencji, która zmierza do podporządkowania tak naprawdę sądownictwa władzy wykonawczej. Myślę, że ta nieustępliwa i konsekwentna presja, która jest wywoływana, jak też działania podejmowane przez sądownicze instytucje, myślę, że one będą bardzo pozytywnie odbijać się na przyszłości Polski i Unii Europejskiej. Proszę mi pozwolić na tym zakończyć, bo to podziękowanie tak naprawdę jest dzisiaj najważniejsze.
Merci beaucoup. La parole est maintenant à notre collègue Barbara Duden pour le PSE.
Ja, vielen Dank. Im Namen meiner Fraktion und als Vorsitzende der CIVEX-Fachkommission begrüße ich es außerordentlich, dass wir diese Diskussion über die EU-Grundrechte und Werte heute haben. Aus meiner Sicht sollten wir sie öfter und immer wieder führen, denn was genau die Grundwerte sind, die uns zusammenhalten und was wir konkret darunter verstehen, muss immer wieder aufs Neue im Austausch miteinander bestätigt und bekräftigt werden. Und wenn wir uns in anderen Teilen der Welt umsehen, dann wissen wir auch, warum die Achtung der Grundrechte und die Rechtsstaatlichkeit in Europa so ein hohes Gut sind. Verhalten, politische Entscheidungen und gesellschaftliche Entwicklungen innerhalb der EU, bei denen die allermeisten von uns sagen, das ist nicht die europäische Wertegemeinschaft, die wir wollen und für die wir kämpfen, die unsere historischen Erfahrungen widerspiegelt, den Kampf für Freiheit und Demokratie im Westen und Ost, den Schutz vor staatlicher Willkür und die Überwindung nationalistischer Exzesse auf Basis gemeinsamer für aller Menschen geltende Rechte. Da schmerzt es dann besonders, wenn einige von uns, die solche Entscheidungen treffen oder solche Politiken verantworten, sich dann das verbitten, was sie eine Einmischung der anderen in die sogenannten inneren Angelegenheiten des einen oder anderen Staates nennen. Als freiwillige Union von Völkern und Staaten geht es eben gerade darum, dass wir anerkennen, dass diese Werte und Rechte für uns alle gelten, für alle Menschen, die in einem EU-Staat leben, unabhängig von Rasse, Religion, Geschlecht oder Nationalität. Und deshalb kann es bei den Fragen der Grundwerte innerhalb der EU kein Innen und kein Außen geben. Ebenso macht in diesem Zusammenhang eine förmliche Unterscheidung zwischen den Zuständigkeiten verschiedener Ebenen keinen Sinn. Es ist nicht die alleinige Zuständigkeit der Mitgliedstaaten, für die Einhaltung von Grundwerten und Rechtsstaatlichkeit zu sorgen, wie wir erst kürzlich von Vertretern einer bestimmten Fraktion hier im Haus behauptet wurde, sondern im Gegenteil. Es ist im ursprünglichsten Interesse auch der Städte und Regionen und der EU als Ganzes sowieso, dass die Grundrechte überall in gleichem Maße geachtet werden. Denn ohne diese Grundvoraussetzungen sind alle anderen Instrumente der Integration, die alle auf gegenseitiges Vertrauen aufbauen, sind null und nichtig. Darüber hinaus fallen natürlich viele der Elemente, die notwendig sind, um offene demokratische Gesellschaften zu schaffen und zu erhalten, in denen die Grundrechte geachtet werden, fallen direkt in die Zuständigkeiten der Städte und Regionen. Sozialer Zusammenhalt als lebendiger Beweis für die Achtung der Grundwerte, körperliche und geistige Unversehrtheit, Nichtdiskriminierung, Zugang zur Teilhabe und vieles mehr muss jede Bürgerin und jeder Bürger in ihrem direkten Umfeld erleben können. Und die Menschen erwarten gerade auch von der Europäischen Union, die sie als Friedens- und Werteobjekt verstehen, genau das. Ich weiß, dass mit den gegenwärtigen Instrumentarien der EU noch nicht alles erreicht ist und dass das politische Klima vielerorts im Augenblick diesen Kampf noch schwieriger macht. Aber er macht ihn deshalb auch umso dringlicher. Und ich bin der EU-Kommission und Kommissar Timmermans dabei sehr dankbar, dass die jüngste Mitteilung zu diesem Thema noch einmal deutlich aufzeigt, was schon funktioniert, aber auch aufzeigt, wo es weiterhin große Defizite gibt. Der AdR wird sich mit einer Stellungnahme in diese Debatte einbringen. Und wir hoffen natürlich, dass auch die neue EU-Kommission diese Debatte und diesem Thema immer weiterhin große Aufmerksamkeit widmen wird. Und ich möchte in dem Zusammenhang, wenn ich darf, 3 Fragen stellen und eine Bemerkung machen. Sehen Sie die Möglichkeit und die Sinnhaftigkeit, durch die Zusammenführung der bestehenden EU-Rechtsinstrumente in einem umfassenden EU-Grundrechteakt die Kohärenz, aber auch die Sichtbarkeit dieses Themas und die Rolle der EU-Institutionen zu stärken? Und dann ist es auf mittlere Sicht aus Ihrer Sicht sinnvoll, dass diese individuellen Rechte direkt einklagbar zu machen, also nicht nur den Institutionen zu überlassen? Und dann, weil mir die Zeit wegläuft, als guter Punkt noch zum Schluss. Wir haben mit Besorgnis gehört, dass es offenbar bei der wichtigen Frage eines gemeinsamen Transparenzregisters für uns alle in der EU so aussieht, als wenn die eigentlich versprochene Einigung nun doch nicht mehr vor der Europawahl zustande kommt. Sehen Sie, Herr Kommissar Timmermans, dafür noch irgendeine Aussicht auf Einigung vor der Wahl? Dankeschön.
Merci beaucoup. La prochaine oratrice, c'est notre collègue Ulrike Karl van Landeren pour le groupe ALDE.
Kära kollegor, jag tror att det är nödvändigt att vi så ofta som möjligt påminner oss om vår union, vad den grundar sig på. Värden, respekten för mänskliga rättigheter, frihet, demokrati, jämlikhet och rättsstatsprincipen. I dagens Europa ser vi rädsla överallt. Misstro mot banker, ekonomisk kris, rädsla för invandrare, misstro mot politiker, en känsla av osäkerhet, diskriminering och intolerans. Detta har lett till att vi nu får fler förespråkare som vill ändra på våra grundläggande rättigheter. Som svensk och liberal politiker vill jag inte vara en del av den världen. Jag ska citera en amerikansk president Roosevelt som en gång sa: "The only thing we have to be fear is the fear itself." Vi kan inte uppnå grundläggande rättigheter utan tolerans och god tillämpning av rättsstatsprincipen. Vi måste värna yttrandefriheten och religionsfriheten, rätten för EU-medborgare att fritt röra sig i Europa. Icke-diskriminering och jämlikhet, det är för mig värderingar som inte är förhandlingsbara, eftersom de befriar människor och ger medborgarna möjlighet att utvecklas och tillhöra en värdegemenskap. Om några veckor har vi ett Europaparlamentsval där opinionsundersökningar just nu visar att fler extremister och populister kommer att ta nya mandat. Vi har ett stort ansvar som lokala politiker. Vi har skyldigheten att se till att våra medborgare får en god service, att våra ungdomar får jobb, annars tappar de vårt förtroende. Vi har ett stort ansvar att vi inte tillåter droghandel eller fundamentalister eller skapar utanförskapsområde. Rättsstatsprincipen måste gälla för alla våra medborgare i Europa. Våra utmaningar är verkligen stora och världen är komplex. Men det är bara i Europa där vi har de nödvändiga instrumenten där vi kan lösa det här tillsammans och bekämpa rädslan. Och det ska vi slå vakt om, våra grundläggande rättigheter och värderingar. Jag skulle vilja vända mig speciellt och tacka idag för det anförande som Michelle O'Flaherty lyfte, nämligen den lokala nivåns ansvar. Ja, vi gör och kan göra skillnad lokalt varje dag. Men vi behöver göra mer allihopa, vi som sitter här inne. Så jag vill också sända en hälsning att vårt lokala ansvar ska jag ta, och jag hoppas att alla mina medlemmar här i regionkommittén jobbar på lokalt sätt för att säkra rättsstaten och EU:s värderingar. Tack!
Merci beaucoup. Je cède maintenant la parole à notre collègue David Simmons pour le groupe ICR.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The EU needs to focus on what it does best and avoid competing with some of the other established and effective bodies that safeguard the rights of our citizens. And I found it very impressive listening to our guest speakers as they outlined the work that they do in the respective and different roles to ensure that the rights of our citizens and indeed our institutions are properly upheld. In the United Kingdom, I am a magistrate. I'm a lay judge, unpaid and professional. I'm not a lawyer. And I mention that because I think it's important to recognise for most of our citizens, for most of our institutions, their experience of justice and the rule of law will be very much a local experience. It'll be about what happens in their community and their day-to-day life. And I was very struck by what Michael O'Flaherty talked about, where there is a challenge often for local institutions about whether they have sufficient autonomy to be able to fulfil the rights which citizens and other people who may not yet be citizens, refugees, for example, expect to have fulfilled and are entitled to have fulfilled under the laws both of the Union and the laws of a member state. But I have a particular point that I would like to make in respect of cohesion policy and the way that this impacts. In the ECR group, we have a concern that there is a risk that introducing conditionality to cohesion policy would create a very unjust and unfair situation in which local authorities, regional authorities that may lack the autonomy, as Michael O'Flaherty pointed out, are nonetheless the victims of a failure on the part of the member state to comply with some of the rules. And in particular, that would disadvantage those local and regional areas that are benefiting from that funding because they are already struggling. So I think we need to be very careful about proceeding down that particular rule, and I would be interested in your reflections on that point.
Merci beaucoup. Et au nom du groupe European Alliance, je donne maintenant la parole à notre collègue Alfred Bosch.
Thank you, President. Yes, certainly fundamental rights are being challenged all across Europe. Democracy, human rights, dialogue, they're all being challenged. And yes, also in the Kingdom of Spain. Now, the question is, how can we be so strict with those applying to enter the Union and not so strict with member states? We're giving the wrong message. We're asking those outside something which we might not be asking those inside. So I ask my fellow European citizens, I am a Catalan citizen, I'm also a European citizen like you, and I ask you, did you see the police crackdown on peaceful voters on October 2017 in Catalonia? Did you see a government like your own government's being suspended and direct rule being imposed? Did you see this government in jail and sitting in jail for more than 1 year now, accused of organizing a vote? Now, what kind of crime is it? In fact, it was erased from the Spanish Code of Law in 2005. So it's no longer considered such a crime. That's not preserving the rule of law. Have you seen singers being persecuted? Freedom of expression also being curtailed with a gag law in Spain? Too many red lines have been crossed. The Council of Europe is following on this. And I ask you, can you remain silent? We're fellow citizens. We share fundamental values, fundamental rights. We're all Europeans. Let's share those values. We will uphold them, and we will continue to do so. But please, get into our shoes. We ask you to feel like we feel. We ask you to feel Catalan. We ask you to be Catalan. We ask you to act Catalan. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur le vice-président Timmermans nous avait annoncé qu'il devait nous quitter avant la fin du débat. C'est pour cela que je lui donne maintenant la parole pour pouvoir réagir et je remercie les autres invités de continuer d'être avec nous. Vous aurez l'occasion de réagir alors à la fin si vous êtes d'accord. Comme ça, nous aurons un débat tout à fait arrondi. Vous avez la parole, Monsieur Timmermans.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci de m'accorder cette gentillesse. Je suis désolé, je dois partir dans quelques minutes. Let me start by emphasizing again why, in the view of the European Commission, it is so important, also for local and regional authorities, that we have the independence of the judiciary as an important element of the rule of law. And we talked a lot about principles today and why this is important. I could add very briefly, it's also important because if the European Union, it's anything, it's a community of values of member states, big and small, who know that the only way we can move forward is if we remove the brute force of power and replace it by the force of law. Because that's the only way you can maintain a sustainable relationship between nations and citizens that have such different force, in strength, in size. And this is where we take leave of the mistakes of European history, where it was always brute force that decided who ruled. And now it is no longer. It's democracy, it's the rule of law and the respect for fundamental rights. And to that end, you need law. You need treaty, and the treaty needs to be respected. Let me then explain why I think this is not just a matter of principle, but also very practical. To have the EU function, to have the internal market function, to have all the instruments of the EU, all the policies of the EU function, we need a uniform interpretation of EU law. This is not easy because very often EU law decided at the European level needs to be transposed in national legislation. So if you have EU law transposed in national legislation and there is a conflict about the interpretation of that EU law, the national judge becomes a European judge. If that national judge, if she or he is not sure how to interpret EU law, that judge has direct access to the European Court of Justice in asking guidance how to interpret EU law. This system is sacrosanct if we want the uniform application of EU law. In other words, if we want every EU citizen and every EU operator to have the same level of protection by the law and also to have the uniform application. It's the only way we can maintain also the internal market in a uniform way. Now, if this is in any way or form obstructed or challenged or impeded by the executive or by the legislative in a member state, then we can no longer guarantee the uniform application of EU law, and that is a direct threat to the internal market. And especially just think about things like legislation that affects you directly, Natura 2000, everything having to do with waste management, etc. You need to be sure that rules applied to you are exactly the same as elsewhere. So this is also one reason, an extra reason why we need this independence of the judiciary. And let me add one thing. What puzzles me most is that in some member states, the political forces who say they want to finally defeat communist legacy, etc., at the same time apparently would like to return to a situation where the ruling of a judge is decided after a phone call to Party Central. This is not a situation we ever want to return to anywhere in Europe. And the Commission will certainly use all the instruments it has at its disposal to prevent that from happening. And by the way, those who say you should not intervene, this is a national matter. First of all, by law, it's not a national matter, as I've just explained. But also in the perception of a majority of our citizens, this is not a national matter. My experience over the last 3.5 years in Poland, where I've had quite an extensive debate with the Polish government, I was told by many people, inside and outside of the European institutions, don't do that, don't go there, because this will lead to the hatred of the Polish people against the European institutions, and it will lead to Polexit. This was the argument being used. The reality of the matter is that today the support for the European Union in Poland is higher than 3.5 years ago. The reality also is, I've been told, I haven't seen it myself, apparently there's a recent poll in Poland where it appears that the trust in EU institutions is higher than in national institutions. So this indicates that if EU institutions take the responsibility to apply the rules we've collectively decided, then this is respected by the population. By the way, none of the rules the Commission is enforcing were decided by the Commission. They were decided by the co-legislators, the European Parliament and the Member States in the Council. So they are criticising the application of rules they have themselves decided. And the Commission is only a referee. You can't play football if you don't respect the referee. You can't have the EU function if you don't respect the referee. The Commission being the initial referee and the higher referee, of course, being the European Court of Justice. Do we need to bring all these things together in one document? I'm not so sure. I think we have all the different institutions have their strength. Do we need more coherence? Yes. Do we also need more preemptive action at the political level? Yes. In that sense, I understand the initiative by Belgium and Germany in the Council, where they say we as member states should be talking to each other much more to prevent things going wrong. And every single member state should be prepared to also have themselves evaluated on the level of the rule of law. I think that's a good initiative, and that could increase the effectiveness of our operation. On transparency, the issue is that the reason why we're having this discussion with the two other institutions on transparency is that we want a mandatory register of all lobbyists. This is what the Commission already applies. That's the aim of the transparency debate. The European Parliament is not in a position to accept a mandatory registration of lobbyists with the argument that since they are elected politicians, they cannot be forced to register the lobbyist. I find that a very doubtful argument, frankly, because it's not an obligation on the MEP, it's an obligation on the lobbyist. They should register, and the only thing the MEP has to say, if somebody comes to represent an interest, not your constituents, but somebody who comes and represents an interest, then they should be in the register before you receive them. That's the only thing we're asking. But there's a majority in the European Parliament who doesn't want that. And as long as they don't want that, I don't really see a merit of having an agreement. So I will keep on discussing this and fighting for this, but I fear this will not be concluded within the mandate of this Parliament or this Commission. Now, on the conditionality issue in cohesion policy, look, I think this is very important. That we have this conditionality because we have a collective responsibility vis-à-vis every single European taxpayer who puts this money on the table, that this money is well spent and doesn't end in the wrong pockets and isn't used in a wrong way. Having said that, this conditionality does not discharge the national authorities for funding the projects at a local and regional level. So this conditionality would only mean that the national government would have to fund the full amount of the projects, and the European part of co-financing would no longer be provided. But there is no discharge of the responsibility of the national government to keep funding those projects. Having said that, I wish we never have to apply it. And the one element that would be very helpful is if every single member state would accept the authority of the European Public Prosecutor's Office in following up on the spending of EU money. And at present, of those member states who can accept this because they don't have a special provision on this issue, there are only 2 who don't want to do this. I'll mention them and you can draw your own conclusions, Hungary and Poland. So I think if you would put the European Public Prosecutor's Office in a position to follow up on this, it's European money, and to prosecute misuse of European money, then the conditionality would be there, but would not have to be the instrument we use most. Now, coming to the issue of Spain, and we've had earlier the occasion, not with Mr. Borsch, but with other representatives to talk about the situation in Catalonia, and I can only repeat what I've said before, and I can only be very clear about this. Spain is a member state where the rule of law is applied, where democratic rights are fully applied, where human rights are fully respected. If you have a problem with the Spanish constitution, you have the right to fight politically to have that constitution changed. You don't have to agree with it. But in a democracy, a rule of law-based democracy, where the rights are respected, you don't have the right to simply violate the constitution. You can fight for changing the constitution. There is also clearly an offer of dialogue by the Spanish government. And it is clear that the Spanish government cannot simply ignore the constitution. That would be a breach of the rule of law if they did that. And it's also clear that the Spanish government cannot intervene with decisions taken by the Spanish judiciary. That would also be a clear breach of the rule of law if the Spanish government would force the Spanish judiciary to act in a way that is beyond the remit of the executive or the legislative power. So I think the only way forward is for a dialogue to take place within Spain, within the rule of law, within the rules of the Spanish constitution, and then find a compromise with Catalonia. Having said that, I want to end very briefly because Pavel Adamovich was mentioned here, and I should have mentioned him myself. I can redress that at the end of my comments. You know what I take away from his memory is this. He always advocated dialogue. He always advocated finding compromises. He was always looking for the middle ground based on our shared values. What I see today in Europe is that political forces that look for division, for confrontation, are very well able to split societies, to look for groups in society that look for confrontation. But if I look at what's happening in some of our member states and one member state soon perhaps not to be a member state, is that if you create these divisions in society, within families, etc., you also paralyze society, and then nothing moves forward. And I believe we have a collective responsibility as politicians from left to right, regardless of your political views, to try and bring society together, because only a European Union that is together, only member states where societies are together can actually take the steps we need to move forward as societies. And this, to me, is the most important lesson Pavel Adamovich left us with. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier vice-président, et nous aurons encore du travail à faire.
Merci beaucoup.
Nous poursuivons maintenant notre débat. Nous avons encore 11 inscrits et je clôture maintenant la liste des intervenants. Et je demande à chacun de respecter scrupuleusement le temps de parole. S'il ne le fait pas spontanément, je l'aiderai un peu à partir des moyens que j'ai ici comme président. Et après ces interventions, j'inviterai nos invités à se repositionner par rapport à tout ce qui aura été dit. Le prochain orateur est notre collègue Olgrit Geblewicz.
Szanowny Panie Przewodniczący, dużo głosów dzisiaj polskich i dużo głosów o Polsce, bo tak naprawdę dzisiejsza dyskusja to dyskusja o wolności każdego z nas, o wolności każdego mieszkańca Europy, bo nie ma wolności bez demokracji, nie ma wolności bez państwa prawa, wreszcie nie ma prawdziwej wolności bez poszanowania praw podstawowych. To są nasze europejskie wartości i my, jako Polacy, pewnie do nich przywiązujemy nadzwyczajną wagę, bo ja całe swoje dzieciństwo spędziłem w kraju, w którym te wartości nie były przestrzegane, gdzie nie było wolności, gdzie nie było demokracji, gdzie nie było państwa prawa, gdzie partia rządząca mogła wpływać na sędziego. W związku z tym chyba ci, którzy tego typu wartości tracą, wiedzą doskonale, jak one są ważne i jak one dobrze smakują. Kiedy Polska odzyskała wolność, nasz wielki Polak Jan Paweł II powiedział: wolność nie jest dana, wolność jest zadana. Tak ją właśnie traktujmy i tak traktujmy nasze europejskie wartości jako dar, ale i jako nasze wspólne zobowiązanie. Tutaj na tej sali wiele osób pytało, a kto tak naprawdę ma pilnować przestrzegania tych naszych europejskich wartości? Pan kolega Simons powiedział, że tylko niektóre instytucje. Nie, ponieważ wartości to nie są obowiązki. Jeżeli porównamy wartości, porównamy nas wszystkich jak do jednej rodziny, która mieszka we wspólnym domu, to jeżeli chcemy ten dom budować w oparciu o wartości takie jak miłość, przyjaźń, to nie możemy powiedzieć, że to jest odpowiedzialność tylko dzieci albo tylko najmłodszego dziecka. To jest odpowiedzialność każdego członka rodziny. I tak samo my wszyscy na tej sali i wszyscy w Europie musimy codziennie o te wartości dbać i codziennie je pielęgnować, w szczególności my samorządowcy, na samym dole.
Tak jak Paweł Adamowicz.
Dziękuję bardzo, panie przewodniczący.
Merci beaucoup. La parole est maintenant à notre collègue Walter Flegel.
Poštovani predsjedniče, prije svega zahvaljujem što danas možemo razgovarati o ovoj važnoj temi. Svi mi naime znamo koja su temeljna prava i vrijednosti Europske unije. Ja posebno želim istaknuti mir, slobodu, sigurnost i pravdu kao nešto što je na svima nama da čuvamo, ali i da unapređujemo. Europska unija treba pokazati, ali vrlo konkretno i u sljedećem proračunskom razdoblju, zalaganje za ekonomsku, socijalnu, teritorijalnu koheziju i solidarnost među državama članicama. Ono što je svima nama važno je da svi građani trebaju imati jednaka prava pred zakonom u svakoj zemlji. A što se tiče ljudskih prava, Europa treba inzistirati da nema diskriminacije na temelju spola, rasnog ili etničkog podrijetla, vjere, uvjerenja, invaliditeta ili seksualne orijentacije. Svi to zajedno pozvani smo da učinimo, a zadnje što želim reći da treba više napora uložiti za načelo jednake plaće za jednaki rad u različitim državama članicama. Hvala.
Merci beaucoup. La parole est maintenant à notre collègue Jakin Horváth.
Tisztelt elnök urak, alelnök asszony, igazgató úr, régiók bizottsága. Magyarország az elmúlt 10 évben a jogállam fokozatos lebontásának tipikus példájává vált. Néhány gyakorlati példa. A legfontosabb, korábban független intézmények élén kizárólag a kormánypárt bizalmi emberei ülnek, és létrehoztak egy új bíróságot, melynek bíráit már az igazságügyi miniszter nevezi ki. Az általános iskolákban gyakorlatilag megszűnt a szabad tankönyvválasztás, kiszorították, elüldözték a CEU-t az országból, és jelenleg a Tudományos Akadémia függetlenségének csorbításán dolgoznak. Az országban a hajléktalanok gyakorlatilag bűnözővé váltak, a legális menekülteket segítő szervezeteket pedig büntető adóval sújtják. Tavaly évvégén 476 országos és regionális média terméket vontak egy központi irányítás alá. Ezekben a médiumokban a gyűlöletkeltés, idegenellenesség, a félelem fenntartása napi rutinná vált, hiszen ez szolgálja leginkább a populista célok elérését. Az EU támogatásokkal megvalósuló beruházások megkerülhetetlen szereplője a miniszterelnök gyerekkori fotballcsapattársa, aki 10 év alatt kisvállalkozóból az ország második leggazdagabb embere lett. Magyarországon jól látható, mit eredményez az, ha egy tagállam semmibe veszi a jogállami alapokat, és az EU ezt szinte tehetetlenül kénytelen nézni. Pontosan ezért van szükségünk a jövőben egy mainál is jóval erősebb Európára. Köszönöm szépen!
Merci beaucoup. La parole est maintenant à notre collègue Franz Schausberger.
Herr Präsident, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren! Es wurde heute schon sehr viel über Polen gesprochen, es wurde auch über Ungarn sehr viel gesprochen. Es tut mir leid, dass der Herr Vizepräsident nicht mehr da ist. Mich hätte auch sehr interessiert, wie die Meinung der Kommission zu den sehr kritikwürdigen Vorgängen gegenüber der unabhängigen Justiz in Rumänien ist. Das wäre für uns alle auch sehr interessant gewesen. Was zur Bedeutung der Regionen im Zusammenhang mit der Förderung und Umsetzung der Grundrechte betrifft, so ist das alles zu unterstreichen. Ich möchte nur sagen, dann ist es aber auch notwendig, dass die Regionen und die Kommunen entsprechend stark dazu sind, dass sie das auch umsetzen können. Dazu brauchen sie die Kompetenzen, dazu brauchen sie auch die finanziellen Möglichkeiten. Und ich darf da auf den Herrn Direktor verweisen, der das schon gesagt hat. In Wirklichkeit, meine Damen und Herren, vor 10 Jahren 2009 durch den Vertrag von Lissabon wurden an sich die Regionen und Kommunen gestärkt. In Wirklichkeit müssen wir feststellen, dass insgesamt in Europa und in der Europäischen Union die Regionen und die Kommunen eher geschwächt wurden und dass die Zentralisierung vorangeschritten ist. Daher meine Bitte an die Europäische Kommission, im Sinne der Förderung von Frieden, Demokratie, Freiheit und Rechtsstaatlichkeit auch auf die Stärkung der subnationalen Ebenen entsprechend zu drängen, damit sie sich einsetzen können für die Grundrechte.
Merci beaucoup. On me dit maintenant que Monsieur le Directeur doit partir. Peut-être si vous voulez dire quelques mots de réaction, je vous offre bien volontiers évidemment l'opportunité.
Thank you very much, President. Thank you for your great flexibility. I would like to just respond to some observations in a single response, but I'd like to say at the outset, I'm so happy that Pope John Paul II was cited, a true human rights champion who described human rights, fundamental rights, as modernity's greatest achievement. Now, delivering those human and fundamental rights is undoubtedly extremely challenging at the moment, but let's not underestimate what we have in our toolbox. In the first place, we do have an increasingly united, integrated system for the protection of fundamental rights. I'm sure that the President of the Court will speak to that in just a moment. But my agency is supporting the ability to identify and use that system, including at the local level, through the development of some new tools. We will launch this year something called the Fundamental Rights Information System, which will be an online tool to make it so much easier for you to apply EU human and fundamental rights law in real applied practical situations. A second very important tool that you all know about because you work day to day with people at the local level is the extent of goodwill and passion for decent societies. I know you know it because it's there, and I encounter it every time I meet with a group in a city, a town or a village. It is demonstrating its power right now in the context of climate change. I'm sure many of you have had to wonder if you're comfortable with your children missing school on Friday because they're protesting climate change. But this is a wonderful demonstration of how this goodwill, particularly of young people, is making a change in our societies. And we're increasingly seeing that also in the pushback against populism. Time and time again, my last word, the pushback against populism is identified at the level not of the state, but of the city. Mayors, city councils, local authorities, you have put yourselves in the front line of defending our values. And I just want to, my last word to you be a renewed assurance that the Fundamental Rights Agency will do everything within its mandate and its capacities to support you in your vital work. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Directeur, d'avoir participé à nos travaux et à l'avoir enrichi par toutes vos contributions. Merci beaucoup et bon retour. Nous continuons alors notre débat avec les membres par l'intervention de notre collègue Johan Calabuic.
Gràcies, president. Vaig a parlar en valencià o català, com preferisquen vostès. Bueno, en primer lloc, volia dir que, efectivament, les intervencions que han hagut ací són clarament, no solament indicacions, sinó que són obligacions que assumim les regions i que tenim que aplicar, especialment en el que es tracta de les accions que tenen relació en la defensa de la diversitat i també de la protecció dels grups socials més vulnerables. Dit això, volia també lamentar profundament la intervenció que hem sentit abans del representant de Catalunya, perquè he de dir-los que l'estat espanyol és un estat clarament democràtic i on se defensa l'estat de dret, hi ha una clara independència del poder judicial. En el nostre país hi ha persones que han sigut vicepresidents de governs que estan en la presó, membres de la família real, grans empresaris, i això demostra que han superat aquest poder judicial totes les pressions que ara tampoc es poden acceptar utilitzant les institucions comunes a tots. Moltes gràcies.
Merci beaucoup. La parole est maintenant notre collègue Michiel Scheffer.
Dank, voorzitter, om in dit gremium een zwanenzang uit te mogen spreken na de verkiezingen in Nederland. We leven in vreemde tijden, tijden waarin een lidstaat zelfs trots is om het vrij verkeer van personen te gaan afschaffen bij het uittreden uit de Unie. Waarin partijen opstaan die het beroep op EU-recht willen beperken voor burgers en ook de toepassing van verdragen wil beperken. In de communicatie van de commissie aan ons ook wordt veel waarde gehecht aan het begrip dat de Europese Unie niet alleen maar een federatie van staten is, maar ook een rechtsstatelijke gemeenschap van burgers en organisaties van burgers. En ik zou de commissie ook willen aanmoedigen om in de uitwerking van haar communicatie daar ook aandacht te geven. Om burgers instrumenten te geven om het Europese recht te kunnen gebruiken als hun positie door de macht wordt aangetast. Want waar macht misbruikt wordt door de rechtsstaat te krenken, moet je een tegenmacht organiseren. En de beste tegenmacht is altijd de tegenmacht van burgers. En ik zou daarom ook de commissie willen aanraden om met name die openingen in het stuk om de burger meer positie te geven, de civil society meer positie te geven, om die mogelijkheden te versterken.
Merci. Et la parole est maintenant à notre collègue Raffaele Cattaneo.
Grazie. Da dove vengono i diritti fondamentali e i valori dell'Unione Europea? Vengono dalla tradizione greco-giudaico-cristiana, è un fatto storico e reale. Io affermo che all'origine di questa civiltà europea si trova il cristianesimo, col suo fermento di fraternità evangelica. Non sono parole mie, ma di Alcide De Gasperi. Abbiamo lingue diverse, storie e costumi diversi, ma in ogni villaggio europeo c'è una chiesa e una croce. E il cristianesimo non ci ha chiuso in una fortezza, al contrario ci ha reso capaci di dialogo con tutti, di costruire comunità e un sistema di diritti in grado di proteggere realmente i più deboli. Il nostro sistema di diritti senza il cristianesimo semplicemente non esisterebbe come non esiste in altre parti del mondo. Purtroppo però è in corso un processo di rimozione sistematica del contributo alla costruzione europea di questi valori e radici cristiane. Ma nessun albero può prosperare se taglia le proprie radici. Dunque l'Europa non può e non deve rinnegare le proprie radici cristiane e la propria identità cristiana, che si esprime nel primato della persona, nel ruolo della famiglia naturale, nel rispetto della libertà, nella solidarietà, nella sussidiarietà. Allora vi chiedo cosa ne abbiamo fatto di questi valori, come l'Unione Europea intende riconoscerli e concretamente sostenerli. Non ritenete che i rigurgiti di antisemitismo, di razzismo siano anche figli della negazione ideologica delle nostre radici cristiane e della loro negazione concreta in tanti atti e leggi e decisioni dell'Unione Europea? Grazie.
Merci beaucoup. La parole est maintenant à notre collègue Sirpa Hertel.
Arvoisa puheenjohtaja, hyvät panelistit. Kun puhumme ihmisoikeuksista, puhumme myös naisten oikeuksista. Olen erittäin tyytyväinen, että alueiden komitea on juuri hyväksynyt strategian sukupuolten välisen tasa-arvon edistämiseksi alueiden komitean omassa työssä. Tasa-arvosuunnitelma on todella tarpeellinen, sillä onhan se häpeällistä, että meitä naisia on vain 21% täällä alueiden komitean jäsenistä. Tilanne on EUn jäsenmaiden kaupunkien johdossa vielä huonompi, sillä vain 15% pormestareista on naisia. Mielestäni Euroopan ja EUn tulisi olla tasa-arvon ja ihmisoikeuksien edelläkävijä ja näyttää esimerkkiä muille. Kotimaassani Suomessa meillä on lailla säädetyt kiintiöt, joka edellyttää, että kaikissa kaupunkien ja kuntien hallituksissa ja komiteoissa on oltava jäsenenä vähintään 40% miehiä ja naisia. Tämän 40% kiintiön tulee olla myös EUn ja alueiden komitean tavoitteena. 21% naisia alueiden komitean jäsenistä ei jatkossa enää riitä. Kiitos.
Merci beaucoup. Et la parole est maintenant à notre collègue Franco Jacob.
Sì, grazie Presidente. Ma noi siamo di fronte oggi ad un dibattito fondamentale, perché fondamentali sono i diritti e in questo caso l'esercizio della vera cittadinanza europea. Fondamentale quindi la tutela dei diritti, il rispetto dell'indipendenza della magistratura, perché l'esercizio dei diritti avviene attraverso l'esercizio della magistratura. Però i valori dovrebbero essere un patrimonio universale, condiviso, i valori appartengono a noi. E il problema di come esercitare i valori, soprattutto a livello locale, a livello delle città e delle nostre istituzioni locali, però dipende da come noi consideriamo l'opportunità di esercitare questa funzione. È stato ricordato la centralizzazione o la decentralizzazione dell'esercizio delle funzioni fondamentali in questo campo. La forza degli esecutivi spesso determina anche l'esercizio del potere finanziario, l'esercizio della informazione o della disinformazione su alcuni temi, la possibilità o l'impossibilità di esercitare a livello locale queste funzioni. Credo che l'Unione Europea debba porsi il vincolo forte della forte pressione perché questo diventi un patrimonio difeso e un patrimonio indisponibile per quanto riguarda appunto il valore individuale dell'esercizio di queste funzioni.
Merci beaucoup. Et le dernier orateur est notre collègue Paweł Krzyzbowski.
Panie Przewodniczący, Szanowni Państwo, dzisiaj mówimy o ochronie praw obywatela, ale również o praworządności. Ja chciałbym zabrać kilka zdań w kwestii łamania praworządności w Polsce. Ten obraz jest zakłamany. Minęło ponad 25 lat od upadku ustroju komunistycznego, ponad 35 lat od stanu wojennego w Polsce, a w naszych sądach nadal są sędziowie, którzy skazywali opozycjonistów w latach 80. Mam 43 lata, jestem 17 lat samorządowcem i w sądach polskich są patologie, a przez te kilkadziesiąt lat żaden z rządów nie odważył się na reformę sądownictwa. Obywatele, wybierając rząd polski, chcieli tej reformy, a do patologii należy właśnie brak dekomunizacji. To przewlekłość, niewydolność sądów. Obywatele nie mogą doczekać się na odpowiednie wyroki, również my samorządowcy w kwestiach administracyjnych. Korupcja, brak zasad i etyki. Nie można mówić, krytykować, nie robiąc nic. Uważam, że jest to bardzo ważna kwestia. Komisja Europejska prowadzi dialog z rządem polskim i jest to niezbędny warunek również, aby te prawa w Polsce nie były łamane dla szarego obywatela, który potrzebuje szybkiej reakcji, potrzebuje sprawiedliwości. Więc bardzo proszę, aby ten obraz nie do końca był zakłamywany, choć zgadzam się, że wolność jest nam zadana i trzeba o nią walczyć, ale również trzeba walczyć o prawa zwykłego obywatela. Dziękuję.
Merci beaucoup à toutes celles et ceux qui ont participé à ce débat que nous pourrions certainement encore prolonger beaucoup, mais toute chose vient à sa fin. Et avant de clôturer ce point, je souhaiterais redonner la parole à nos deux invités qui ont eu l'endurance de rester jusqu'au bout. Merci beaucoup. Et je demande d'abord à la vice-présidente, Madame Domenica Ghidei Biidu, de nous faire part de ses réactions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to react on a couple of points. One is that the standards applied are not only for the EU member states, but for all the 47 member states of the Council of Europe. So that makes that in the 25 years we exist as ECRI, we have been monitoring the legislation on the criminal law, on the private and also on administrative law, on how the European Convention and the European standards have been implemented in the countries on the legislation level, but also in the implementation level. We also do that at the local level. In each and every country visit, we always ask also, we try to visit at least certain city regions in which we are seeing how it's being implemented. And our contacts with the equality bodies, which is also very vital to that the victims are assisted and that there is a comprehensive awareness raising going on the rights, fundamental rights and human rights of citizens. So it's very important that the local authorities have a very a standard of cooperation. I would like to remind you that I hope there are enough copies, but outside you have this brochure, which is the cooperation for effectiveness of local authorities and national specialized bodies on combating racism and intolerance. Please, you can see if there are enough copies. And we have also the abridged version of a couple of our general policy recommendations about combating hate speech, fighting racism, intolerance and discrimination against Romas, and also safeguarding irregular present migrants from discrimination. And as the gentleman said, Mr. Scheffer, in Dutch, I will rephrase what you said. It's de rechtsstatelijkheid van de gemeenschap van de burgers. I agree completely with you. That's also the starting point of our work, how individuals are being addressed and touched by the legislation and by the work we are doing. And on what Mr. Catania was saying on Radici Cristiane, I would like to say that the roots we are having and the fundamental ideas, it means also that how can we safeguard that within our values, that the different religions, being Muslims, being the Jewish, being the Christians, are also respected, and the different Christian denomination in which Europe is rich about. So it's about coexistence, it's about cohesion, and it's about non-discrimination of all of us and creating a society which respects the rule of law and also non-discrimination based on equality. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Et le mot de la fin revient évidemment, comme il se doit, au président de la Cour de justice de l'Union, à M. Koen Lenaerts.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Moi également, je voudrais partir de l'intervention de M. Scheffer, qui a dit dans notre langue commune, gemeenschap van burgers, instrumenten om het EU-recht te gebruiken. Ce qui veut dire communauté de citoyens et les instruments pour que ces citoyens puissent vraiment utiliser le droit de l'Union. En réalité, je peux l'assurer, ces instruments existent. Le droit de l'Union est invocable tel quel devant les juridictions nationales des États membres. Et c'est là la raison pour laquelle les juridictions nationales sont en même temps des juridictions européennes. C'est parce que les juridictions nationales sont des juridictions européennes que l'Union européenne est en droit et a la compétence pour vérifier que les juridictions nationales soient indépendantes, impartiales et opèrent selon les règles du procès équitable. Parce que les juridictions nationales ne se limitent pas à l'interprétation et à la mise en œuvre du droit national, ils font en même temps l'interprétation et la mise en œuvre du droit de l'Union. Or, cette sanction judiciaire du respect du droit de l'Union en faveur des citoyens ne peut être atteinte que lorsque les juridictions nationales rencontrent les exigences inhérentes à une juridiction, c'est-à-dire l'indépendance, l'impartialité et le procès équitable. toute la confiance des citoyens dans le droit de l'Union repose sur le fait que ce droit sera appliqué de manière égale dans l'ensemble des États membres en faveur des citoyens. Et ça ne peut se faire qu'à travers des juridictions indépendantes, impartiales et opérant selon le mode du procès équitable. J'ai très peu dit sur des États membres en particulier et je ne vais même pas prononcer leur nom ici parce que comme président de la Cour, je suis soumis à un devoir de stricte réserve. Mais les orateurs qui ont pris part à ce débat se sont référés à quelques États membres nommément désignés. Je peux vous dire qu'il y a des affaires pendantes devant la Cour de justice concernant les 3 États membres qui ont été mentionnés par les orateurs différents. Ces affaires parviennent à la Cour comment? En réalité, de 2 manières. Soit la Commission lance une procédure en infraction du droit de l'Union à l'encontre de l'État membre concerné, parce que l'État membre défendeur a prétendument, dans la vision de la Commission, violé les principes de l'indépendance et de l'impartialité de la justice nationale qui est en même temps la justice européenne. Il y a plusieurs affaires de ce type et je ne peux rien en dire en détail parce que ce sont des procédures pendantes. Mais il y a une deuxième voie, c'est la voie où des citoyens saisissent des juridictions nationales et les juridictions nationales présentent à la Cour de justice une question préjudicielle sur l'indépendance et l'impartialité des juridictions et les règles du procès équitable. La Cour de justice a la compétence de répondre à de telles questions dès lors que le litige au principal concerne le droit de l'Union, c'est-à-dire des droits que les citoyens tirent du droit de l'Union, et que, pour une juridiction nationale, afin d'être en mesure de faire respecter ces droits des citoyens, cette juridiction doit pouvoir donner la primauté aux droits de l'Union, dont les citoyens tirent leurs propres droits, et pour ce faire, cette juridiction nationale doit être indépendante par rapport au pouvoir législatif et exécutif de l'État membre en cause. Et c'est ainsi que les affaires parviennent à la Cour. La Cour, évidemment, est une juridiction. Elle est réactive lorsqu'une affaire lui est présentée. Elle n'est pas proactive comme peuvent l'être les instances politiques. Et c'est par là que je veux clôturer. Les instances politiques ont la responsabilité d'établir les règles au niveau tant national que supranational pour assurer que toutes les juridictions de l'Union européenne, c'est-à-dire des juridictions nationales, soient indépendantes et impartiales. C'est la garantie ultime également de la confiance entre États membres. Si un investisseur d'un État membre A ne peut pas être sûr que lorsqu'il a un litige dans l'État membre B où il a fait un grand investissement, il s'ensuit un litige avec le fisc, les autorités fiscales de l'État membre B. Si l'investisseur de l'État membre A n'a pas la certitude absolue qu'en faisant cet investissement dans l'État membre B, qu'en cas de litige fiscal, le juge de l'État membre B sera indépendant et impartial par rapport à l'administration fiscale de l'État membre B, qui fait partie du pouvoir exécutif de l'État membre B, il est clair que le marché intérieur et les droits des justiciables sont irrémédiablement violés. C'est ça qui explique que l'indépendance et l'impartialité des juridictions nationales n'est pas tout simplement une vue abstraite de l'esprit, une valeur abstraite à l'article 2 du traité sur l'Union européenne, c'est en fait une précondition tout à fait pratique pour que l'Union et la confiance entre États membres la sous-tendant puissent fonctionner convenablement et dans l'esprit des traités. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Vice-présidente, Monsieur le Président.